Welcome to this departmental seminar. This is one of a few this year which I think are going to be in person. So it's good to see a number of people here. I think there might be some more people coming throughout, so allow them. Or not. Maybe.
Are you recording? You promised to record.
We are, yes. I think the plan is that we are recording. So access this after the event. But yeah, just by way of a little bit of background, Carolien Rieffe and her colleagues from the Netherlands are here visiting for a kind of a 2-day seminar that's associated with a sort of collaborative project on use of kind of wearables, wearable technology in school, playground and classroom and mealtime settings, and we've had some really fantastic kind of discussions, and hopefully this collaboration is going to be moving forward. So it's been a great couple of days, and it's great to finish off with Carolien telling us more about the work that she's been doing. Just by way of a little bit of background, Carolien worked in our department a few years back.
20 years.
20 years, yes.
That's the age of some of these students now. Yeah.
But continues to be a visiting professor here as well as at University of Twente. And you're based in
Leiden and
Leiden, but you can say Antwerp. Okay. And you
that's the Netherlands, right?
Yes. You head up, Carolien heads up the Focus on Emotions lab based there at the university. So
there's more chairs here. There's chairs there. Maybe you move those.
I will. Yeah. So I'll hand you over.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful
welcome,
introduction.
And nice to have you.
Yeah, so it feels like coming back home. Actually, I would have never left if it wasn't for all kinds of reasons. But I really like my 3 years that I worked here as a professor, lecturer. Anyway, I'm also happy in the Netherlands, and the flight's only 40 minutes, so not too far. I'm not sure what title I gave at the time, and asked me about title. This is my title now, but it's going to be about autism, inclusion, equity, diversity, and the school context. No worries. Okay, I'll give a bit of a background information where I'm coming from. I'm a clinical actually I've finished my undergraduate in statistics. But then moved on into clinical psychology, child psychiatry. And so I've done a lot of work from that kind of perspective, from child psychiatry, for example, into autism. With a very strong focus always on, that's why I was hired actually 2001 to come here, because I have an expertise, my strongest expertise at the time was in emotional intelligence, all different kinds of emotional intelligence, which I think is core to our daily social functioning, our mental health, has a lot of implications. It's an important aspect. Actually, emotional intelligence is better predictor of your academic success than your cognitive intelligence. Dino Petridis was also stationed here at the time. He's still at UCL, another department. So this is where I'm coming from, what I've been doing for years, and I looked at different social groups, different groups. So DHH is for deaf and hard of hearing, autism, DLD is developmental language disorder, also DSM-5 classification. TD stands for typical development. And whatever kind of tasks we did, overall, we saw many times, this is a frustration task, and see if young children can then regulate their own emotions and their behaviors. And overall, we have so many publications showing problems in these 3 groups. Related to social problems, that related to higher comorbidity like depression, anxiety, also longitudinal. Go to our website, you find like tons of publications on that. As you can tell already, I think by my body language, I've moved on to something else, which I'm going to talk about today. What these 3 groups have in common is this door, this is supposed to be a door, is access to the social world. So for very different reasons, children with hearing loss, people with individuals with hearing loss, with autism or with a language disorder, for different reasons, have less access to daily social meetings. All of them might be fine here in this room, but go out to the restaurant where we were yesterday, I was almost even freaking out because of the noise, the poor acoustics. So imagine how that impacts these three groups. So imagine the school environment, or here the hallway, and that's where you socialize, right? That's where you meet your peers. It's not here, although you're sitting next to each other, but where you make appointments, where you plan to study together, where you plan to go to the cinema together. That's out there. And these environments especially are less accessible for these three groups. Yeah, you're welcome, no worries. I just started, no worries. There's chairs here, there's some chairs here. I know that's scary, but there's really chairs here and here to sit so. Yeah, there's chairs here. Find yourself a chair. You can move it to the back if you want. No worries. Please make yourself comfortable. There's chairs here still. Come. You can move it. I love these chairs. I love the design that they have wheels. I'm really going to suggest that back home at the Dutch universities. Okay, so for everyone who came here new, I'm developing these three. I'm looking into these three groups: young people with hearing loss, autism, or language disorder, because they have something in common. They have less access to the social world around them for different reasons, and that affects their learning, their social learning, their emotional development. So and this is about 10%. So when you look at a school class, 10% of the population, and most likely more, as many people get a diagnosis later in life. And many even go undiagnosed, of course, if there's no necessity for it. So approximately 10%. So if you look at a regular school class, there will be children with special needs, these kind of special needs in every class. Now, how do children develop their emotional intelligence when they're very young? And I mean, it's through social learning, right? There's differences in how we deal with one another emotionally and how we communicate emotions when I'm in China, when I'm here in the UK, even to when I'm back home in Amsterdam. Amsterdam people are very different from UK people. We're much more expressive, for example, much more blunt. So I noted that when I came to work here, I really had to adapt. So there's huge cultural differences that shows that you learn it within your social environment. And you're even with your friends, you're different than when you're with your parents or your siblings. I think with your siblings, usually people are most open about their, less regulated about their emotional expressions and communication. So when you're young, when children are young, it's parent-child interaction. When they're older, it's peers, right? So that's I couldn't find a good picture of schoolyards, but that's the child's elementary school, primary school, and it's supposed to be primary school and secondary school. And that's where you meet, and that's where you socialize, and that's where you develop. And so we see emotional intelligence and the other areas related to that are greatly depending upon your social participation and your access you have to your peer group. This is reality for a deaf child. This is one deaf child sitting on the slides, but this is what we see constantly. And this is not an exception. And actually, when the PhD students send me video and photo material, I asked her, I said, Brenda, it's all so negative. Can you send me some positive interactions? I thought she did it on purpose, that she selected out of all the video materials she had, the negative parts. Because either she sent me videos that the child was alone, or it was very subtle but negative, like that microaggression. One child not being able to go off the slide stopped the deaf child. The moment that deaf child went off the stairs, all the other children could go. So if you're a teacher on that playground, you really have to focus in to recognize that kind of microaggression, right? So that's what these children meet on a daily basis, day in, day out. That's where adults send their children to. Right? This is a child in a mainstream setting. So this is not an exception. Then we also went to measure things at the playground behavior in a different way. And we used sensor data. So here you can see children get this clip. In the beginning they didn't want it, and then Gita, the one who started this research years ago, she said, who wants a medal? Then of course they were lining up, they all want it. And we can measure with these clips. It's like your mobile phone, your Bluetooth. You can see who's in your proximity. All right, so this is how it's measured. And then this is what you get over time in the playground. And the colors here, I'm looking at Moeda, computer scientist in our lab. I'm always checking with her, am I saying it right here? This is the social groups, right? The colors here represent different groups. So they are generated based on the time of interaction and the duration of interaction, the frequency of interaction. Then we get these kind of networks. So we can see who's on the playground playing with whom over time during recess. And so that's the time where they need to socialize, right? That's the time where you make friends. That's the time where you learn how to lose or win a game, how to behave, how to negotiate. Well, find the deaf child. Yeah, so what you saw with that photo on the slide is now what you see here based on sensor data. So, what to do next? Can't say I have the answers, but how to approach this, how to look at it. Now, this is a playground, but of course it goes to, you can apply this to so many other layers or levels or environments. The same principle. So when we look at the literature, when I focus on autistic pupils, they do note, based on self-reports, parent reports, different kinds of research that we didn't do, but just the literature overview, they feel less connected with their non-autistic, holistic peers. They have fewer social interactions, participate less in joint activities, and they spend less time or more time in solitary activities. So often it's said, of course, when it comes to autism, they don't have a social motivation, lack of social motivation. You can even, in the Web of Science, if you look at your search, type that in and get lots of publications on lack of social motivation, typically for people with autism. Then the question is, of course, is that a negative choice? Is it because they don't want to, they want to be alone, or is it they rather be alone than being hurt by that daily microaggression, day in, day out? We know also from self-reports and other kinds of research, we see no loneliness in primary schools, but when they get into adolescence, autistic pupils do report high levels of loneliness. And what we see in one of our studies is they do want to be part of a group, but they don't necessarily need many interactions. I'll get back to that later. Traditionally, where I come from, being clinical psychology, we're working within clinical psychology and psychiatry, you focus on the child. We have a problem here. This child doesn't interact with other children. This child is lacking social interaction and not happy. And also note the highest rate, at least in the Netherlands, of the children. There's children that don't go to school at all for different reasons. 50% of the children at home that skip school have autism. So how to fix this? Traditionally, then children.
You don't know that figure for the UK, do you?
I'm sorry.
So you don't know that figure for the UK?
No, but I assume, similar, maybe less, but then good for you, but still, will still be a considerable amount. Yeah. And then not to mention all the ones that are undiagnosed and we don't know. So traditionally we focus on the child and so we have a problem here, how to ensure social inclusion. I changed to equity, but I'll get to that later. how to fix the child. That's the traditional view. That's how I've been taught before. So what do they get? A social skills training or training in emotion regulation, because maybe they're over-aroused too easily and they can't deal with their peers properly, or an anti-bully program. And nothing changed. Nothing changes. So they get all these treatments or trainings inside their break times that we just discussed this morning, even when they're supposed to be out there with the others. So maybe it's time for another approach. One, because we have a changing view on what is clinical. So at the time when I started doing research on autism, we thought autism was something that needed to be cured. Well, I'm not saying we, people, researchers, academics, clinicians, thought autism is something that needs to be cured. We've changed over the years. And now it's seen as a form of diversity that doesn't need to be cured. But someone should be able to be who he is and develop to his or her full potential. So there's another approach now towards autism. Instead of fixing it, we should just respect it as a form of diversity. When I started this line of research 25 years ago, I think, I did my first study on autism, I wouldn't have even thought about including someone with autism, him or herself, themselves, in the research. And now it's daily practice. So that's also a good thing. Like the work we do on deaf children, we have deaf researchers in the lab. The work we do on autism, we have autistic people involved in the research at every stage and checking everything. Even I'm not even sending out a publication anymore on autism when not a person with autism, an autistic person, has read the full paper from A to Z and saying it's okay, just out of respect. So the whole idea of diversity has been changed from fitting to the norm to no, diversity is good for society, it's good for group processes, and it's respectful towards individual members of our society. So how to fix it then, instead of focusing on the child, we should actually focus on the environment and enable an environment. So, or enable the child by adapting the environment. So one, of course, is the social level, the built environment, the physical space we're in, and the policy cultural level. In the Netherlands here, it's wetpassend onderwijs. I see that's Dutch. Your Dutch is not that good, I suppose. In 2014, the Dutch law changed that children, autistic children, but also other children with special needs, had to go into mainstream education unless. So if they could make it into mainstream education, had to. So since then, many children are going into mainstream education, but of course the teachers don't know, and especially the playgrounds, are they okay? Or the school buildings. So let's have a look. So we looked at the playgrounds, and these are two primary. I'm going to show you some data from our own research now. What we've been doing since, and how we hope to address the problem and fix it, or contribute to fixing it. So we've been testing on 2 primary schools, but these are schools for primary education. Half of these children have autism, other half of the children have other kinds of diagnoses like ADHD. Some of them don't, but all of them didn't fit the regular education and had to go into special mainstream education and had to go into special education. Okay, with the sensor data, there's different things we can do. This is we can see here how the playground is used, and you see on the left that's the sensor data that I showed you, right? Here we can see on the left the first part. You can see where children play with a heat map. Then you see there was a new thing placed, construction placed. The school spent money on whatever new construction, and you see all children really like that because the heat map moved there. But then after 6 months, it turned out that the investment maybe wasn't that clever because children went back to their other space, right? They didn't stay in at the new thing that much. And that's Morella sitting over there. Yeah, you didn't know this was coming. Now you see how big it is. Because she's our star. I mean, she does all the analysis. She has all these. You have all these dreams about what we can do with sensor data, and then we just get her all the money, and we buy the equipment, and you get it done. So we really have a nice team, as you can imagine. Anyway, this is what came out of the school for special education, the autistic children. You can see the autistic children are red, non-autistic blue, and it's funny, you can see on the left side the 3 teachers talking to one another. Exactly. Yeah, so we get lots of other information from the sensor data that we never asked for, but it just came out. And so also we have one slide, I didn't include it now, where 2 children are walking off the schoolyards, which is not allowed in primary school. And no one knew, but then we saw these 2 children walking around the school and maybe even into the area, right? Whether they walked into the streets and the houses. And, yeah, they had a great time until we came with our sensor data. We asked them with a self-report questionnaire for their loneliness in school. How have you been feeling lately? And we see there the non-autistic children, and we checked, and we had measures now with the sensor data, how much time they were in social interaction with peers, and for how long. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell, on the slides that you saw, we see in special education so far, this is all primary, our pilot data, to us it's still pilot data. It's all published, but you know, we always want to have the next research to confirm what we found in the first one. But there we saw no differences in time of interaction or time spent with others or the group sizes between the autistic and the non-autistic, the holistic pupils. Yeah? But we do see a difference here when we compare it, when we connect it to loneliness. And we also ask them, who do you want to play with? Peer nominations. Who do you like in your class to play with? And we see for the holistic children, the non-autistic children, that the more time they spend at the playground with others, with their peers, the less lonely they felt. So this is what you would predict. More time in your break time with others, and then you feel more happy, you feel less lonely, you feel a sense of belonging in your school, right? We didn't see that in the autistic children. There was no correlation there. But we did find that for them it was important that they were liked by their peers. So this is fundamentally different. Then for them it's important that there's someone that if they want to contact that person, then the contact is okay. But they don't need to be with that person all the time or with their peers all the time. Right? So you see here individual differences in needs. Add question. Oh, yeah, Dennis?
So preferred by peer means that loneliness is correlated with whether other children nominated them in the peer nomination as
that they like to play with them. And these
potential playmates.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not sure now, Young Ting isn't here. Yeah, unfortunately, but I think it's the reciprocity. Reciprocal peer nominations, but that we have to check the paper.
Okay, so the more reciprocal peer nominations they have,
I think
that would make sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the knowing that you're welcome and that people are happy to see you. Makes sense to me. Yeah. So, yeah, Ed, because yesterday I talked about this but too hastily, I think.
Yeah. It's very interesting. What I was just thinking about was in relation to children with other different needs.
So all these children do have special needs because they're in special education. So I don't know how this works out in mainstream education. Yeah.
There's some other research that suggests that self-esteem is not unaffected by peer preference. That's going through my head. But yeah.
Okay, we also asked parents what was about many variables, fill out questionnaires, and we asked parents about the school participation of their autistic children. Now this is the Nederlands Autisme Register, based at the Free University in Amsterdam, where once a year I'm not sure how many parents with a child with autism or autistic people themselves fill out online questions, and it's a huge database. And you can, if you are interested in anything about autism, go to their website because they publish all these demographics, and they do so much. Anyway, so we also got in our questionnaire what we wanted to know once. And we see that school participation, going to school for the autistic children, as reported by their parents, is not related to family factors, is not related to the pupil itself, themselves. It's related to school factors, but not the social environment, but only the built environment, the physical environment. I'll get back to that now. 3,000 parents of autistic pupils yearly fill out this questionnaire. That's a lot. And we asked autistic teenagers in high school or autistic teenagers who already dropped out, but about how they felt. We had focus groups with a clinical psychologist who led the interviews and asked them, had them freely talk about their daily life experiences in school. Okay, now none of them. I find it. I always get goosebumps. None of them had friends in school. I think that's really shocking. I mean, and then you have to go there every day, right? Oh, some friends. They felt uncomfortable being alone. What they did, because when we got this grant 5 years ago to start this research, I remember that my prediction was that the autistic pupils, and I thought especially the girls, they don't want others to know that they're alone, that they don't have this social connection. So I thought, they hide somewhere. They'll go and sit in the toilet or something. Well, not here in this building. Sorry, we've been complaining about this building a bit. Okay, forget that joke. Slipped out. Anyway, they didn't do it in our research either. So they're smarter than I thought ahead. They go to the class. I don't know here in the Netherlands if you are in high school. The first year maybe you have classes together, and the second, and then it changes depending on the topics you choose. So you might be in biology with one group, and then with another in geography or mathematics or whatever. So you have to change and so on. So what these pupils, so you have to move all the time between classes, and what these autistic students did, and I think nearly all of them, during breaks, right, in between the classes, when the others are socializing, eating together, and chatting, making friends, or breaking up, they would go to the next class. So if the next class would be biology, they would go and sit there. And they gave themselves an attitude. So they were really aware of the others being judgmental about them being alone. And so one of the girls, I remember, she said, I draw a lot, so I start drawing that the others think I'm really busy. So they didn't want to give the impression that they were alone, that they were a victim, right? So there's this awareness of how others perceive them. And they also mentioned it's difficult for them to go somewhere where there's already a lot of others and then to go and enter alone. It would have been nicer with someone else, like with a friend. So that's an extra barrier. And they also said time goes faster when you're with someone else. So for them, the days in school were long days and stressful days. And of course, some of them already dropped out. They also mentioned at Sunday night, some of them, many of them actually, not all, that Sunday nights they already had stress levels rising to the extent that they had stomach aches. Some of them reported, I already have stomach ache at Sunday night, thinking by the idea that they had to go to school on Monday morning. And this is what they're facing every day for years. But what they also said, how to get to the front door. I can't walk the hallways when everyone's out there in between the classes. It's too busy. People are running to you. I can't get to my locker. I can't walk the stairs up and down because all classes are going together up and down. Right? It's too scary. It's too overwhelming. I have no place to sit in the canteen. There's not enough chairs. Or the acoustics are too bad for me. It's too much noise. They had many comments like this, also about how the walls were organized. Well, this is kind of calm environment, how the walls were organized, but a lot of comments on the physical environment. So, in other words, that whole physical environment, the built environment, actually is already autism unfriendly. And that was also what the parents noted, right? So that really coincides with that. Oh. So, if we want to do something, the first priority we should have is addressing the built environment, the physical environment. If we don't, it's like asking, I'm going to explain this photo in a minute. If we don't address the environment, it's like you can compare it to asking a child in a wheelchair to go into this building here without having lifts, right? With all the stairs everywhere. And then being surprised that the child can't access the class, but let alone when you socialize. So what we hear in the autistic pupils, they're already tired already from the classes and being in the school building, so they won't even have the energy to go and socialize in break time. They rather sit alone and calm down. They need that. So when we focus on the environment, there's so many things we can do. Now this is an example, yeah, sorry for the guys who were there yesterday, same example, but I like it so much. So I use this example a lot. This is in the city center of Amsterdam, the canals, right, the inner city. In front of like Sainsbury's, we have another shop, Albert Heijn, but this is, imagine Sainsbury's. So we Dutch people, we cycle a lot. Everyone goes by bicycle to our, UK also much more, but we still do more. So bikes are everywhere, and we could never enter this supermarket in the city center because everyone parked their bike in front of the front door. So you could never get in. And look at this. There's no one telling anyone what to do. It's just simple lining on the floor. And the door is now bicycle free, the entrance. And this is my bike with the green thing. Because I'm also an obedient citizen. I follow the rules. You see? Now isn't this funny how with a simple change in the physical environment you can create a change in behavior. So we do this whole project with computer science, but also with architecture. Oh, I thought I saw no. So there's some best practices. Yep. Huh?
About 10 minutes.
Good. I think I'm. Oh, you're so strict. I think we started 3 minutes later.
Don't worry.
Okay, so now we're looking into best practices, and where is that? Schools with autistic pupils. They know best. And this is a school I visited to do research because they wanted to do the research with the sensors. And I'm there during their break time being amazed how these children are playing there. I mean, a schoolyard full of autistic children, and everyone's like, seemingly having a good time there. Whereas I know when I cycle to the train station and I pass a few schoolyards, mainstream schools, you immediately pick out the children that are, when it's break time and you pass a playground, and you see all those children playing there in the recess time, you immediately pick out the child that's bullied, or the child that's neglected, or the child that's too close to the teacher that feels unsafe, right? You immediately see that. Here, everyone seems to be fine. And whenever, so it's a policy thing also, because whenever they had a problem, there would be a supervisor sitting with the child separately. If the child needed that, they could ask for that. But one of the things they had was a lot of green. So who said that this morning? I think you, yeah, good. I'm really curious. You said there's a lot of literature already out on the importance of green, which has a really positive effect. No? But they also had clear rules, what helped here in this particular case, so that's on the policy level, that children already had to choose before the break and tell the teacher where they would go in the break, which area. And then the breaks only are 15 minutes, they have several breaks during the day, 15 minutes each, and then during those 15 minutes you're in that area. You cannot go then anymore from one area to another, that's it. Seemed to work. And I love this one, they have a greenery, you call that? Like a garden? How do you call that? Kitchen garden? No.
A garden?
Garden? Yeah, but I mean a garden for vegetables that you can eat and stuff.
Yeah, it's a school garden.
School garden.
Vegetable.
Allotments. Okay. Improving my English vocabulary here. Schooltuintjes, we say. Moestuin, I forgot even now in Dutch, moestuin. Anyway, so, I mean, and this works wonderful. If children are over-aroused, they can ask themselves to have a break here. And so that's a win-win, because they're working in the ground and getting dirty, but also the school's going to get vegetables. And they're learning new skills. And it really seems to work out really well. So again, there's a lot you can do with the environment, right, to give a very different perspective. And be friendly and welcoming for everyone. So, I don't think the whole key issue is about social inclusion. Because we see also from our research, not everyone always wants to be socially included. Maybe you want to be alone for the day, but still, the moment you want to connect to the others, you should be able to, and you should feel welcome. And for that, there's a lot of things schools can do, universities can do actually, primary and high schools. So basically, you really need to involve your stakeholders, money, and schools really need a clear, proactive policy. So what are the things that came up with the architect, Alexander Koutamanis? We're going to do it now in English. We really went to sit and wrote a paper, but in Dutch. What is autism-friendly architecture? So if you're interested, send me an email and I can send you the one. We've translated it into English, but we're going to make a longer version, an official one. Many schools don't have a chill-out room. Or schools do have a chill-out room, but I remember from the high school where my son went, that when we had a meeting with the teacher, we sat in their chill-out room. So, not really. Designated areas. That's for especially people with autism. Another thing is, we think anything you do to have an autism-friendly environment fits everyone. Fits so many, because there are so many different groups, and you can find then there will be different areas and for different people and different spaces. So we think this should be the basis for everyone. Designated areas, library is a library, not use it for other. I'm wondering the lobby here now with all those tables, can you have meetings there because people are working? But that's I find it a fake designated, undesignated area by the design of her. Just an idea is different level of gymnastics. There's many ideas. And what we know from the focus groups, that I assume it's international, that there's a Friday that people wear purple to support the queer community, the LGBTQI+. I'm not sure if I have them all. Community. And the autistic people said we really like that, because if a school participates in that, joins in with that, they show that diversity is important to them. And then we also feel more respected. So, whatever kind of diversity, it helps. Basically now we can say safely that many schools that we go to are really unfit for autistic children. So as I said, it's like, and it's invisible. Many children don't have the label autism on their forehead. You don't know, but in thinking in terms of equity, you have to be considering all different kinds of diversity, including autism, on a daily basis when designing a space. So now we see many schools are really unsuitable. And I think then, if we then focus on these children, that's really victim blaming. And if we put these children into a social skills training when they can't even access the building because of over-arousal, that's giving that child the idea that there's something wrong with him or her. Right? So children internalize that. What's wrong with me? Look, all these trainings and I still have no friends. And I still meet this microaggression, which they won't name. And that's the danger of it, because it's so subtle. You have nothing to say. You have nothing to go to your teacher because, it's nothing, right? It's invisible. And it's so important to include the perception and the different needs of different kinds of people. So equity to me means equal rights and not necessarily the same desires. And that's many school systems now are working towards social inclusion. And I think we should change from social inclusion to equity. And then it's up to the individual. Okay, now I'm not sure what's coming now. I think I'm kind of done, but there's another slide. I'll talk you through it. And then I think my time is up. We have a future. Oh yeah. Okay, we just got another grant. We already had plans. Okay. We have another thing coming up, and that's that we want to know. So what you saw in the schoolyard data we have with the sensors, then we had a questionnaire separately, asking them in class to fill out a questionnaire. How do you feel in school? Now with Moed and others, Dennis, we are designing, as we speak, we are designing a smartwatch in which children, and Ed, you already have a smartwatch up and running, but then Moed had a bit different desires here for the smartwatch, so we had to do it ourselves again. It's almost done as far as I know, where we can ask pop-up questions how children feel at the time when they are out there in their break time. And so this also means that when a school does any intervention, we can see where the intervention was, how children feel in that canteen or that location over time. And if those changes give a better outcome. And not just the majority, but also taking into account all these individual differences. Okay, this is the team. I'm done now. This is the team, and it's me all here on the left, but it's a long group of people from different countries, and especially important, I think, really multidisciplinary. So like what I already said, computer science, also governance, there's many other. It's going to come online. You can take a photo, but it's also going to be somewhere out there. Ed will organize that. And if you want to know more about the research we do, you can go to focusonemotions.nl. And I think it's a really beautiful website. We just got it up and running since a couple of months. It's a lot of work. Scroll down, because there you can see the sub-project. So you will find inclusive school environment, but there's also, if you're interested in autism, a separate research project. Autism, if you scroll down, then there will be separate research projects underneath, and the schoolyard being one of them. So I think now we have time for questions. I got so warm here.
Such perfect timekeeping as well. So.
Yeah, I'm an obedient
I didn't need to be. Well. Great, we've got some time for questions.
I just want to say thank you so much. I can see lots of Maisie students here, which is the program.
Lots of?
Maisie students, the MA in Special Inclusive
Education. Okay. Well,
and
curious.
People in C&C, which is our first module, where we have all these discussions about medical social models and models of disability. And your talk really kind of reflects the discussions we've had over the 10 weeks. So thank you so much, Dan. But there was one thing I just wanted to query, and I think it's a linguistic thing perhaps, where you said different levels of gymnastics. I don't think we're quite clear what that might mean.
Yeah, I didn't get into that. Because very often pupils with autism have more poor motor skills. And in, I don't know here, but in the Netherlands, you go with your own group to gym class during school.
Like PE, yeah.
Oh, PA. How do you? What's that?
Physical education.
Okay. So that's PA then. I will change that.
Okay, thank you.
And so it might be an idea for schools to organize these classes depending on the different levels of motor skills. Because now many pupils with more poor motor skills don't feel comfortable going into these PAs, then you say? Well, whatever, you know now what I'm talking about. Because they feel clumsy, they're not as good as the others, so they say they're ill, or whatever reason they come up with not to go. I see many people nodding. Me? You always skipped your class? No. I'm laughing. Never mind. Anyway, so it might be an idea to have different levels of, in which then you also address the ones that are very highly skilled and active, and maybe you also better address those needs. So it was an idea from students that came up with it.
Yeah, thanks. Again, it was really inspiring. I'm a sociologist, so I'm interested in the interactions, because I really take your point that built environment is so key. But what would you say about, for instance, the issue of social of avoidance of school, and what the response of teachers to that should be? Because getting over the threshold also involves action socially as well.
Yeah, but then again, if what are you asking from children if your building is not suitable for them? So I mean, if you first have your school building fixed, then I think you can invite people with autistic people to come. So I mean, there's really a conflict, because this is now a bit the daily situation, but I think so coming from that perspective, I think it's really important that if a teacher does have an autistic people in their class, first see what you can do and how to address that before inviting someone. I mean, it's inviting someone to come in your space, and your space doesn't address the needs of that specific person.
I mean, I totally agree, but I think it's very expensive for a start. It's not. There's certain principles, and there's a lot you can do in terms of addressing it. No, what I'm asking is not disagreeing with you, but asking what else can you do that can be around modifying, because there are things that you can do, for instance, allowing children to go 5 minutes before.
Exactly.
I've got autistic children myself. I'm
No,
not saying that's right, because
no,
it's
exactly.
so stigmatising and that sort of thing. But I just wonder about that interaction of social response.
Yes, so if I would be a teacher and I have children in my class, and I know there's autistic children in my class, and there's no way I can change whatever, first of all, I would sit with those children and discuss this with them. And what is it you need? What is your daily experience here in this school? What are the problems that you meet on a daily basis? And how can we together in co-design address this? So maybe one child will indeed say, if I can go 5 minutes early before all the others go, I'll be fine. Or maybe someone else will say, if we have a little corner in a hallway with a few seats that are, not closed, but a bit, there's these special chairs. So you have a little corner where you can sit in a smaller constellation. And, so you sit together and fix this problem and discuss what possibilities, given where we are here now, can we do. But I think co-design, because it also validates their existence. And what we see, so working with this deaf researcher in my team, the most important lesson that she gave me years ago was we were writing up a discussion of a research paper and talking about respect. And she said, Carolien, I don't care about respect. She says, it's not about being respected. which is like a common term to use. She says it's important being deaf in a mainstream school or in a nice setting, that if the deaf child says something, that's also validated. It's also important that maybe if the deaf child says, this is important to me, then the whole class moves that way. So and I can relate to that. Being the youngest of two older sisters, I was tolerated. So there's a subtle difference, but fundamental difference between being tolerated or being a valuable member of a group. So if a teacher can achieve that in co-design, I think then that's a big difference. Sorry, I'm really passionate about it. Yeah. But so were you as a mother of children with autistic children. And if you wanted to add something or not anymore.
Yeah, there was a minor remark in the sense that you told a lot about architecture, but architecture is what is built, but also how it is used. And that's something that you do with the teachers and the children.
I think that's my point, really.
Yeah. And also in one of the earlier slides there was the rules and social structures in the school. That's also in hands of the teachers in a way. And like playground rules or things like that. And the policy level thing. So in that sense there's this whole complex interweaving of multiple factors. And I was thinking the co-design really goes beyond asking autistic people, what do you generally think should be done? You know, then they become part of the design of autism-friendly environments in general. But it also happens at a very individual level. This child in this class. And people talking about co-design sometimes confuse these two things and say, when we designed the school, we asked some autistic people, but that is not enough for that individual child in that moment in that class. And as an example, I talked with some people that Edwin Betting works with, autism, well, whatever, doesn't matter. One person said, yeah, you need this quiet space, he struggles in the silence coach train. There's these designated working spaces where you're not allowed to shout. And another one said, no, I never go there, I hate it. Because when I'm there, it should be silent, and it's never completely silent. So I sit in the noisy coupe because then I don't get upset about people not being silent in the silence. It's very interesting. And that's where the co-design moves from designing the building and the space and rules to co-designing your life in the moment. So there's something needs to be done there. That's this conversation with the teacher, right?
Yep.
Time for a couple more questions. Just before we do, it's great to also see so many of the doctorate in educational psychology students.
Yeah.
Now, you have a question.
Sure. So, thank you. Was I the next
Yeah,
one?
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much. It's so interesting to hear about your research. I guess I was really interested in what you were saying around kind of like the built environment. Obviously, you're working really closely with architects. I guess my first question is like, where is this school that you showed? Because it sort of feels a little bit like almost quite. I guess in my head, I'm thinking, well, where is it? Like, is this achievable? I guess in like inner city. And I'm thinking about the schools that we go into, sort of like we all are in kind of like London, different London areas, and the sort of schools that we go into, don't necessarily feel like they lend themselves to this kind of design. And that's, I guess I'm also wondering, obviously, firstly, where that school is, and then also just around, I don't know if that's something you've thought about or like looked into. It'd be really interested to hear your thoughts about, I guess, the different experiences that maybe autistic pupils might have if they are sort of pupils attending inner city schools versus perhaps schools in like more rural settings. Is there like a different inner city versus like if they're more in the countryside, for instance? I don't know if there's kind of differences in the sort of like stimulation of the kind of city and the like the environment around them, I guess, outside of school too.
Yeah, so we look at all kinds of locations. It shouldn't matter. And this one is like at Leiden, so it's a city, but it's a bit at the outskirts. But before, they had just tiles, and they really redesigned the whole playground. And there's much more photos I can show of it. So they have different areas. There's still some tiles, but there's also this, and there's also that, and there's also the greenery, what's allotments. So they really redesigned the whole thing, given the space they have. And that would go for any playground. Of course, there's exceptions that are so tiny, but then still, yeah, there's still. There's many things you can do with lights and acoustics and green. Yeah, and making what's important that it's not one space, for example, but that there's different areas. And that you can have smaller groups, that you don't necessarily have to be in one, like here, one large group, but that you can have little seatings where you can have smaller groups. So there's some children that want to run around and football if that's there, and others want to sit and just have a conversation. So you facilitate broader.
Yeah.
Thanks. That was really good. Really, it made me quite sad because my son is in year 8 and when you're listing all the things, he's got so many of them. He now has like 3 friends, and joining sports clubs. So what you're saying about the gymnastics is maybe a bit different. He can choose the clubs he wants to go to because PE during the school day is very hard for him to do. But he's not he's on the waiting list for assessment right now. So my question is kind of related to that, but also just the things we're studying. Is it a condition of the children that are in your study? They have got they have a government diagnosis of autism, and those are the children who you're following. And is that something that is because obviously, like coming into secondary school, there's all those children that were not diagnosed in primary school because they were just happily running around, and then they hit it, and it's like, whoa. And that's what happened to my son. It's like, oh, suddenly school's terrible. And also, in terms of who's involved in it, and also, what's your view on that the children are having a special school, or is it the special schools good for now because the mainstream schools are not like that? Or would you say that there will always be a place for those schools where you said those children, their social interactions were much more positive and they were enjoying their school day? That was a lot. 2 questions.
Well, many questions. And I do research. Yeah, you're a mother, so your questions are fixed on what decisions to make now for my child. And I'm not gonna. That's first. Yeah. Okay. One thing is the diagnosis. Some children have a diagnosis. The ones in our research all have a clinical diagnosis. And yes, we know, especially girls, during adolescence, get a much higher peak of incidence of autism diagnosis. One thing I think that's good because it gives the child an identity, especially if it's in a positive way, right? Because it gives the child an identity. Oh, that's who I am. It can then many very often children then can relate to others with the same diagnosis. They understand themselves better, and it's a way to communicate with the school. So without that diagnosis, there's not so much. It's much more difficult to have that communication with the school. But now you can, so you have something to communicate. Now, what was the second part?
I think we should probably stop there because we've got to go on to other sessions now. So just a final round.
I'll have another word with
you. Deal with them. So, thanks so much for coming.
Absolutely.
And thanks for your questions.